During this period, there really aren't any other topics. Everyone around the world is focused on Iran. The information I saw today, actually, the information I saw earlier, is as follows. Some media outlets said that Trump actually gave Iran 3 to 5 days to come up with a unified response. But today, Trump himself denied this. He said there is no such 3 to 5 days. He said, I have plenty of time, I'm going to wait. He wants them to come up with a good proposal, one that is good for the United States. On the Iranian side, their response was that today they carried out an attack. 3 cargo ships in the strait were attacked and 2 were even seized. And reportedly, Iran has also threatened to attack the undersea internet cables in the Persian Gulf. In my view, this is already a kind of unrestricted warfare. So at present, do you think both sides are in a stalemate? How long do you think this ceasefire can actually last?
Trump is not in a hurry. I think this is a
more objective perspective.
But I am more, compared to Trump, who is relatively clear-headed, this 3 to 5 days is actually a real thing. Although he publicly denied it, because Trump is actually kind of watching as he goes, not really fighting, but rather blockading while observing. He is watching to see what effect this has. What is the reason for this? Why do I say this about Iran? I think for these 3 to 5 days, he is relatively... There are 2 reasons. The first is that Israeli media are still formal mainstream media. They are quoting sources from within the government. They believe the information they received is that Trump has actually set a rough plan in private. The deadline is around this Sunday. He hopes, or I suspect, that perhaps through some private channel, this information was passed on to Iran. That is, giving you a few more days to quickly come up with a plan. Are you going to negotiate or not, or do you have a unified plan for the talks? In any case, you need to give an answer. Because in fact, although Trump is not in a hurry, it's not possible for him to wait indefinitely. Honestly, it's impossible to let things go on indefinitely, just letting you do whatever you want, like Iran. If I say, even after 2 months, I still haven't come up with a unified position, 2 whole months. If I don't even come to the table to talk, that's actually not very likely, right? So there will still be this kind of limitation. That's the first factor. The second factor, I think it has to do with Iran's oil, specifically the capacity of its oil storage tanks. Because if Iran, according to what we've seen before, if we estimate those oil storage tanks on Iran's Karg Island, the capacity of those storage tanks is basically in about 3 to 5 days, by this weekend, they'll be almost full. So for Iran, it's actually approaching a critical juncture, a crisis point. Once the oil storage tanks are full, they will be faced with the issue of having to shut down the oil wells. Once the oil wells are shut down, if you want to restart them, the losses will be huge. Right now, he says they're losing about $500 million a day because they can't export. If he really shuts down all those oil wells, the losses, it won't just be a matter of 500 million, it could be 100 times that or even more. That's the kind of situation we're talking about. So I think according to their observations, Trump believes that Iran, in a few days when their reserves are almost full, when Iran is facing a critical moment of crisis, Iran will definitely they must make some kind of response. So I think this estimate of 3 to 5 days is actually quite reasonable. That's the situation right now.
Let me talk about the issue of oil storage tanks. I think right now, we actually don't know whether Iran is still able to export some of its oil. Today, I saw some media reports. Of course, the Financial Times is one, and then there's another independent organization, an organization that specializes in data tracking and analysis. They said, in fact, during the period when the U.S. military was blockading Iranian ports over this past week or so, Iran still managed to send out more than a dozen ships. Ships did leave, and they transported about 10 million barrels of oil. Of course, now the U.S. Central Command has refuted these claims, so at this point, information is really flying everywhere. Central Command says, so far, we have already blocked 29 ships. We have forced 29 Iranian vessels to turn back to Iranian ports. They also said that the rumors about some ships breaking through our blockade are not true. They gave a few examples, saying that 2 of those ships are still at the Iranian port. And there is another ship that was detained by us in the Indian Ocean or somewhere else, so now Central Command is denying it, but there are indeed different sources of information. Some say that not everyone was blocked by the blockade.
I tend to believe him. Let me briefly talk about this report. It's from the Financial Times. Today, he said there were a total of more than 20 ships.
He said over a dozen went out and over a dozen went in, because there were more than 30 ships
that went down. So I think this is really a bit hard to believe. I tend to think this might be fake. Why? Because with the capabilities of the US military, they have satellites covering the sky. And then there's such a massive fleet stationed there watching you, even if it were a shadow fleet taking advantage of the cover of night. Maybe they could slip by quietly. If you say 1 or 2 ships managed to get through, I think that's still possible. But you're saying there were over 30 ships, some going in and some coming out. It's like a big highway, right? Coming and going freely, you could say. The US military didn't notice at all. I think that's really a bit unlikely. Truth?
Is it possible that the truth lies somewhere right in the middle? But then again,
even if a few ships did slip through, now the US military has made an announcement. Not only are they blocking the strait itself, they're enforcing a blockade. I can pursue you globally. I can keep chasing you, Even if you sail all the way to the Indian Ocean, I'll still be able to intercept you. I can catch up to you. I'll detain you. Those cruise ships, these large cruise ships, are actually very slow. If you send US Navy warships to pursue them, it's actually a very easy thing to do. So actually, even if a few do manage to slip out, these few would still be hunted globally by the US military, chased everywhere. If you really think they could be sold, I believe it basically wouldn't affect the overall situation. That's how I see it.
Fang Weini, do you feel the same way?
Yes, I completely agree with Jinyuan's view. My opinion is even stronger. I think this time it's really about catching fake news in the media at the right moment. Because this time, it really has far-reaching implications. Because a lot of people really hate Trump, so they use the media as a weapon. Seriously. It's very obvious now. Whoever says anything, even the Wall Street Journal, when they speak, I think their editorial team is still all right. That's always been my view.
He just criticized one of their editors.
Yes, that was just one individual. Overall, they're still relatively clear-headed. What's the word? Rational. That's it. They're still normal. Somewhat. But their news department isn't good. Still, even so, it's not completely hopeless. In the past 2 weeks, it's just that I feel now when I look at news from the media, I can't trust it. So just think about it. Iran. At its peak in 2024, Iran exported crude oil every day through the Strait of Hormuz. The strait handles 2 million barrels. In 5 days, they still exported 10.7 million barrels. This means it never closed. They were moving freely. It's almost at full capacity. How is that possible? It's absolutely impossible. And if you look at what the Central Command released, their data is evidence-based. They cite specific ships and locations, providing solid proof, unlike the hearsay on this side. Sources said, of course, I think the Financial Times source is just that. What's it called? Vatexa. They only have one source, and that's Vatexa, which is just that data provider.
A single source.
Exactly. They don't have any of their own investigations, just a single source. That's why they exaggerate this kind of news at will. I think I have a suggestion for our viewers. At times like this, it's important to recognize fake news for what it is. Fake. When it comes to the media, you really can't just follow along blindly. Otherwise, we'll end up having to spend time discussing these things, right? Like Bloomberg, Financial Times, but by all rights, we used to trust what they said because they're mainstream media, but now they've become like this.
Speaking of fake news and fake media, today there's another case that was also denied by the White House, CBS. CBS reported, according to sources connected to the intelligence community, several officials told them that Iran's remaining military strength now far surpasses that of the United States. They said that currently Iran still retains 50% of its missile capability, 60% of its navy, and as for its air force, it still has about 2/3 of its strength left. Of course, these numbers sound a bit unbelievable. But when it comes to missiles, as far as I remember, there have always been different opinions about this, with people expressing various views. So how many missiles does Iran actually have? Right now, of course, the White House has refuted that. Levitt issued a statement. Let me quickly talk about Levitt first. He said that Iran's defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. The capability to produce and store missiles, as well as long-range drones, has been set back by several years. And then the Iranian Navy has been wiped out, with more than 150 vessels sunk, and the Iranian Air Force has essentially lost its operational capability. Its combat effectiveness is close to zero. This is what the White House denies. But now the question is, what are the actual facts, and how do we distinguish between truth and falsehood? First of all, I think, who really has the facts? I feel that no one truly has the facts.
Only Iran itself actually knows, right? Everything that has been done. Only Iran itself knows for sure, isn't that right? All the actions taken, it's all estimation. What they're reporting now means that it's based on American intelligence. After the intelligence agencies made their estimates, Trump listened and then gave a different version. This just proves that Trump is clearly not telling the truth. I think the probability is extremely low, and I looked at the report you mentioned. I checked and found everything was just source said. There isn't a single name. If you just say source said, then anyone can publish news.
The article says that this source is anonymous because they're not supposed to tell the media this information.
It's really hard for me to believe this. Just saying, it's hard for me to believe. I think right now, because the way the Trump-related war is being handled, whether it scores points or not, will affect the midterm elections. Whether Trump can benefit more, and so on. These kinds of political costs are just too high. So it's not even about both sides anymore. I think some people are just jumping in head first. I think this is exactly an insult to the media. I'm especially honest about this.
We all,
work in media.
it really is related to the election. Right now, they're desperately using this approach because actually, regarding Trump's Iran war, I remember last time it was Dershowitz.
Or
A leftist said something. He said, if this war had been waged by Biden, if Biden could have achieved the current results, Biden would be praised as a god. But now, because it was Trump who did it, they're desperately trying to discredit him. Wasn't there a congressman just a couple of days ago, I remember? He saw this news, Chris Murphy, he saw this news and asked, well, how many times have Iranian oil tankers escaped? He said, this is fantastic. He even posted about it, not this kind of thing. He has already turned this Iran war itself into, it's all aimed at Trump's achievements, a major political achievement. an information war. The focus has shifted. People first wondered who won between the US and Iran. Now it's all about how bad the fighting was. The original concerns about the nuclear and Strait crises remain unresolved. Now, the focus has already started to shift, being led astray by the media. The focus is starting to shift, and it's becoming all about Trump himself. Did you actually make a move in this situation? Did you do anything? It's like that.
I think, to put it simply in plain Chinese, there's a saying that I think is very fitting, and it's correct. The way to look at things is to focus on the issue, not the person, right? When you look at the bigger picture, what's really going on? Now, it's completely turned into focusing on the person, not the issue, just because it's Trump involved. So I have to go in that direction, and that's why there's an effort to smear him as much as possible. He says these negative things. Let's switch it around. If it were Biden instead, then this war would definitely have a completely different tone. So this is how it has shifted from focusing on the issue, not the person, to focusing on the person, not the issue. This is the tragedy of the American media today.
David, do you agree? Neither Jean nor Bang Mei agree with this.
Not only do I agree, I'd like to add something this time. This kind of positive or personal focus on Trump, the attacks on his policies have already escalated. Now, whether it's the left-wing media or some people on the right, they're doing the same thing. Terry Carlson himself publicly said, "I regret voting for Trump." Ever since the war started in these past few days, some people on the right have been saying, what? That this war has already escalated, but why?
That's his personal opinion. He hasn't distorted the facts.
Nah.
Okay.
Now, in the US, many on the right and left have already reached a kind of consensus. They've already converged. It's really that the far left and the far right, their ideologies have already come together. He already said that this war under Trump is a battle between Christianity and Islam. He's already used all kinds of ways. He's turned it from what should have been, I think, as an American, your starting point should be America's victory in this war. So, for example, what kind of impact does it have on America, on the country, or on world peace? But now, they've twisted it into something else. One is about how Trump and certain individuals can gain more power in this war, even turning this so-called Christian culture. What does that mean? It's as if they want to break it and then spread it to Islamic countries, or to Islam itself. The world is like this. No matter who you look at, there are all kinds of such claims from different sides. And this also includes Judaism in Israel, which is also quite chaotic. But if you look at their general tone, they all believe that being anti-Trump is even more important than being anti-America when it comes to the outcome of this war, whether it's victory or defeat. It's even more important, somewhat.
Let me briefly talk about some different viewpoints, since your opinions are all pretty similar. I think it's like this. Whatever personal views someone holds, I believe there's no problem with that. If you don't agree with this war, or if you think Trump's approach is wrong, I think that's all fine. But the main thing is, as long as you don't distort the objective facts, that's good enough. Right now, I'm just talking about the reporting by these media outlets and the facts themselves. Do you think it's correct or not?
I just feel it's highly suspicious, but I also can't provide solid proof that it's definitely wrong. Based on what I know and my common sense, I think it's highly suspicious. If I were their editor-in-chief, I wouldn't let it pass, but somehow it does get through. So that's my opinion.
Let me just bring up a question, hypothetically speaking. If Iran really had such strong capabilities, then before the ceasefire it would have already acted. Why didn't it use these so-called capabilities before, or rather, its capabilities? What we've consistently seen, like the number of drones and missiles, those are its own. The data has been continuously declining. If it really still had so much capability, is it just holding back for some big move? Is it preparing some ultimate attack in a final offensive? Or is it planning a counterattack or something? I don't really think that's realistic. I feel that the actual combat capability it has shown is not as the media have reported.
On this point, I also agree, especially regarding its air defense system, because now many American aircraft are flying at low altitudes. Basically, your air defense system has been destroyed. So I don't think it still has anything you could call an air force. As for the Navy, if 150 ships have already sunk to the bottom of the sea, then all you have left are just some speedboats or whatever else, and that can't be called 60% of its strength. But is the truth somewhere between the two? Maybe it's a bit closer to Trump's side, but it's not exactly as Trump's team claims, that everything has been wiped out. For example, let me give you an example. Trump, today he posted a tweet. He said that 8 Iranian women were originally sentenced to death, but now, after he made an appeal, the Iranian authorities released them. 4 of them were released. The other 4 were only sentenced to 1 month in prison, and so on. Iran came out and denied it. Iran said, no, we never sentenced them to death in the first place. And several of them had already been released a long time ago. Then today, I heard from an Iranian-American conservative woman in the US. She said on a program that she was grateful to President Trump for paying attention to these women. And then she said, as far as she knew, among these 8 people, there was indeed 1 person who was sentenced to death. This person and her husband were both sentenced to death. Then it seems that after the tweet was posted, the death sentence was suspended. But as for the other people, some of them, as I see it. In addition, some people who are more familiar with the situation in Iran said that a few of them were indeed released in March. They are no longer in prison. As for the others, there are a few whose whereabouts cannot be determined. There is no way to verify their situation. This is what human rights organizations have said. There are a few people whose situations cannot be verified, and a few others who, according to their knowledge, were paroled or released in March. So in my view, the real situation is probably somewhere between the two.
I think it's possible that there is some partial truth here. That is to say, I saw that Trump posted about this, calling for the release of these 8 women and so on. Actually, he was reposting something from someone, seems like it was probably an Iranian person. The person who escaped was also of Iranian descent. Yes, an Iranian. It was the information released by these people, so maybe he didn't really. Trump is a rather casual person. He wouldn't say, I'll verify this first, have my team check it. Did all 8 of them really get sentenced to death? And only then did I make a post. He definitely, when he saw it at the time, maybe he just forwarded it directly. I just issued this appeal directly, so why is that? But as for why Iran wants to deny it, I think part of the reason might be, it's not necessarily that all 8 people were sentenced to death, but just like you said earlier, among them actually, some might have been sentenced to death. But Iran, even if they really did release these people, they definitely wouldn't admit it. Because they see this as a matter of face, and it's a very crucial issue. Face, right? If Trump gives an order and tells me to release people, and I immediately do it, if I just release them like that, then where's my dignity, right? So I think it's really a matter of face, and honestly, that's not surprising at all. Including what was just mentioned about how much strength the US military still has left. I think that's actually partially true as well. The issue, as just mentioned, is that nowadays a lot of people keep bringing this up. They use the Strait as an example and say that Trump is just bragging. You say that Iran's navy has already been completely defeated. So why is it still able to blockade the Strait? Look, they're still attacking tankers, still able to do that. Iran is now detaining these tankers. What they're relying on now is actually entirely... They're all those speedboats. Basically, these speedboats I checked, if you look up the numbers, there are at least several hundred of them. Yes, they've even given them a name, the Mosquito Fleet. This Mosquito Fleet, they're not part of Iran's regular navy under the National Defense Forces. They're entirely under the command of the Revolutionary Guard. Because those speedboats are really small, the bigger ones might be a bit longer, maybe, just over 10 meters, and the smaller ones might not even reach 10 meters. So they're like toy-sized speedboats, maybe only able to carry a few people. And then they mount a machine gun on top of the boat, and it's really fast. Plus, along the entire coastline, along the strait and the sea, they've dug a lot of those kinds of caves where the speedboats are usually hidden inside. You basically can't spot them with satellites, and you can't hit them with missiles either. They're basically that kind. Plus, there are so many of them, and they're so fast. It's just like a swarm of hornets coming out all at once. They just fly around everywhere chaotically, attacking people at random. It's that kind of situation. Yeah, the US really doesn't have. Right now, they haven't taken any action against them. There's been no specialized strike against them, so that's why those speedboats, they really can blockade the strait. But a lot of people are confusing this issue with others. I said waging an information war is one of the reasons. Wow, look at how tightly the strait is blockaded. How could the US possibly say they could just handle it? If their navy had been destroyed by the US Navy, it would mean Iran's navy is still very powerful. Basically, Iran is relying on this last bit of remaining strength to carry out the blockade. So actually, I think behind all this, when the White House comes out and presents these figures, saying how much the Air Force destroyed, how much the Navy destroyed, I think these are basically facts, basically all factual. Because Iran's navy, you think about it, after so many years during past wars with the US, how many naval vessels does a country like that actually have? The situation with the number of ships is unclear. But long ago, it was already figured out very clearly how many types, what tonnage, and their displacement. What about your weapon configurations? All of that has been thoroughly figured out. If by now all of them had already been sunk, then basically you could say that this navy has essentially been wiped out. That would be an objective fact.
So, how long do you think this ceasefire can last? It's said that the third aircraft carrier, the USS Bush, is on its way. It seems like it's expected to arrive around Sunday.
First of all, I don't think it will last as long as Trump claimed it would. Because I think right now it's at the Iran level. Just now, as you mentioned, Iran came out and didn't it launch an attack today? 3 cargo ships, and they also seized 2 more tankers. This action itself is actually very dangerous. How should I put it? It's what you might call a red line move, because strictly speaking, as Trump said, even during this ceasefire period, actions like this can easily be interpreted by the other side in a certain way, because it could mean that you are the one starting the war, that you are the one breaking the ceasefire agreement. If things go wrong, American civilians nearby might get hit as well. However, I think that Iran, especially the hardliners, that is, the Revolutionary Guard, these people, actually what they're doing now is just dragging things out slowly like this. If everyone agrees to a ceasefire and does nothing, and then Trump continues to blockade your oil tankers over there, he would lose at least $500 million every day and also face what we just mentioned. The risk of shutting down this oil route is like making this little rice plant bleed. It actually can't withstand it. So Iran is precisely in urgent need right now, especially for the hardliners. They are the ones who urgently need to go to war with the United States. Why is that? Because as soon as war breaks out, they've already made it clear in advance. As long as the United States dares to start a war, we will immediately... All the oil industries of the Gulf countries are listed as my targets for attack. And, as you just mentioned, I would even cut off the undersea cables for you. Because if the undersea cables are cut, the blow to the Gulf countries is not just limited to the Gulf itself, but also affects the connection between Asia and Europe. The impact would be enormous. This would require some practice, at least targeting the Dubai Financial Center. It would be crippled immediately because its traffic, the instantaneous traffic, could drop drastically. It could drop by 70% to 90%, leaving only about 10% or so. It's about 20%. Just think, in a financial center, with that kind of trading, under these circumstances, if suddenly more than half of the traffic is cut off, it would basically be rendered useless. The losses could amount to hundreds of billions of US dollars. That's the scale we're talking about.
Would Iran dare? That's unrestricted warfare. Saudi Arabia and the UAE would immediately send troops. It's like the CCP's style.
They use unrestricted warfare tactics just to scare you.
That's right.
But the question is, would they actually dare to do it?
If it really is about the regime, if it comes down to a matter of life and death for the regime, I think they would dare to do it. But at the same time, they might still hesitate. The thing is, Iran's religious sect itself believes in what's called an apocalyptic faith. They truly believe in that doctrine. Their goal is to create the greatest possible chaos through such means. That's what their doctrine says. They must create the greatest possible chaos. In the midst of chaos, their so-called, what is it called? The prophet will then appear and be resurrected and then rebuild a new world. This is what their teachings say. So this group, the Revolutionary Guard, are basically fanatics. We call them extremists, people with extreme beliefs and extreme ideological fanaticism, these people. They just want to see the world in chaos. No matter how you warn them, if you keep going like this, your regime will collapse, your economy will fall apart. They think it's perfectly acceptable, or just like that.
It seems like Iran actually has quite a few cards to play. They can use creating chaos as one of their cards.
I think so too. That's always been their approach.
That's what they've always done.
US attacks, resistance is futile.
The US, a long time ago.
They know they can't beat the US, so when the US hits me, I hit someone else. It's like Zhang San hits Iran, Iran hits Lisi. That's just how they fight. It's always been like this. Of course, the Lisi is their global chaos includes attacking undersea cables, just like they do with crude oil transport.
Shouldn't Lisi fight back?
Exactly. So how long does Lisi have to put up with this? In the end, when the whole world gets involved, they'll turn around and attack Iran. When Iran is destroyed, in fact, my view is a bit different from yours. I think Trump is deliberately dragging things out. In Chinese terms, he believes that besieging a city is better than storming it.
You're anxious, but I'm not.
I keep you pinned down.
Now I'm stuck.
That's what he hopes for, but the purpose of the siege is still to make the other side surrender, right?
Right.
If you come to me, I'll trap you completely.
What if they don't come?
But they won't come to him.
Right.
The Revolutionary Guard definitely won't come to him.
I think so too.
So in the end, after Trump, so today on my show, on the program, I said this. I said Trump is a very smart, very sensitive, and very sharp person. But he has never been an evil person. He hasn't...
In his heart,
He doesn't know. He doesn't know what evil people are thinking. He thinks, you're just like me. When I hurt your country's interests to this extent, aren't you anxious? Won't you come to talk to me? But the other side simply doesn't care. They don't care about national interests. They care about regime interests, right? I want to maintain my regime. Who does my regime fear? It only fears the people rising up in rebellion, right? So I have to be tough so they won't dare to revolt. Only then can I scare them back. So even if the whole country starves to death, I can still survive. In North Korea, the whole country is starving to death. Kim Jong-un is very fat, right? So I think Trump needs to go through a learning process on this matter. I think...
My view is somewhat similar to yours because I think Trump is a very skilled deal maker, but all the deals he makes are with normal people in a normal society.
Right.
Even if some people are a bit better, some are worse, some are more cunning, some are dumber, they're all still normal people. When you're dealing with these cult-like regimes like the CCP in totalitarian countries,
it's a completely different way of thinking, right? It's not the normal kind, rational, this kind of mindset. Trump actually can't understand this kind of thing.
And I also think Trump doesn't have the patience. If you really, like you said, want to succeed, even if you can't, at least stick with it for a month or two. I'm telling you, if the Revolutionary Guard doesn't surrender to Trump right now, who knows what could happen? Trump might have to go seek them out himself.
That's what I think. I believe it's possible that he would dig up those undersea cables. Because if he wants to win against you, how would he counterattack? What tricks does the Revolutionary Guard have against him? Their move is to disrupt the world and increase political pressure on Trump, right? So, blockade the Strait of Hormuz. They wanted to do this but failed, and then Trump came to counter the blockade. So he thought of a second move, and the second move follows the same logic as the first. So from this perspective, he wants to win. He wants to survive. He wants to force Trump to back down, so he has to use this kind of unrestricted warfare tactics. All this chaos and trouble will eventually push Trump to the edge, or make Trump realize what his role is, so he ends up bringing this trouble upon himself. I think so.
And also drag the Gulf countries in as well.
Yes, it's possible to drag them in. The Gulf countries.
What is Iran's strategy? Their thinking is, I'm basically like a hornet's nest. Trump, you want to poke it? Go ahead, poke it. After that, I'll just go out and attack whoever I can, indiscriminately, and then everyone will definitely blame the person who poked the hornet's nest. If you hadn't poked it, nothing would have happened. See what happens when you poke it. All of us end up suffering along with him. That's his logic. It's really simple, so that's how things turn out.
So I think, what is Trump trying to do? He's trying to create something even bigger than that. A trap even bigger than the hornet's nest, and then just spring it all at once. So I think, because that day I was watching and thinking, this is entirely just my own speculation. I'm just talking off the cuff, because I was thinking about the Gulf War. When the troops were mobilized, it seemed like it was a rush. From August all the way until January of the following year, it was about around 6 months.
2023.
Or
Back in 1991.
1991. So, let's say if Trump really wanted to quickly mobilize troops and settle everything in one go, I think he might actually need even more troops. So during this period, I think he would definitely be considering, like, no matter how much you try to stall, that's it. Goodbye. So I still think the right time was during Trump's time.
Do you mean you think he'll still play?
If
If blocking is such an effective tactic, why bother fighting?
the Revolutionary Guard has made it very clear to us that, in my personal opinion, they are capable.
He will not yield even if he is blocked.
Yes. Because I feel that the Iranian people now are because of you, Iran. It's actually very hard to know what the domestic situation is like now. As for his current situation, because I see that, you see, the internet is still blocked, so you really don't know what things are like inside the country. In this situation, I think he can completely control this kind of information. And you see, internationally, the pressure on Trump is getting bigger and bigger. For the Revolutionary Guard, the longer Trump drags things out, I think actually, for them at least, I think the political pressure is even greater. But actually, I think there's another point, which is, if he drags this war out until, for example, Trump goes to China on May 10th, around the time when he's supposed to go to China, at that time, will Trump have enough troops? Or can Trump just wait until, for example, after he comes back from China to continue fighting? I think both are possible.
May 19th. Will he still go to China then?
I'm starting to doubt whether he can even make it to China. But personally, I feel that Trump is still waiting for more troops.
My view is a bit different from yours. I think Trump won't engage in a ground war. Iran is like a quagmire for us. Iran is just sitting there, and Trump is standing on the shore with a bamboo pole poking at you. He can hit you if he wants, or not. He decides how he wants to fight, but he can't really do anything. Trump can't be beaten. America can't be beaten. This is Trump's way of not getting stuck in the quagmire. Actually, he can advance or retreat as he pleases, and he won't rush in and get into a bitter fight with them, or even try to overthrow them in one go. If things go wrong, it could turn into a tough battle.
So, does this mean that not fighting him also implies not bombing him either?
Bombing.
But not ground troops, right?
Right.
So there is absolutely nothing lying on the ground.
So now, you see, Iran has just started to take the initiative. Provoking, right? Toward Trump, he came out and said, I am declaring an indefinite ceasefire. Iran immediately said that as long as you continue to blockade this strait, that means violating the ceasefire agreement. Did Iran state this clearly? As long as you keep the blockade, you are the one who first violated the ceasefire. Since you have already violated the ceasefire agreement, then don't blame us for being impolite. We can continue, and if we need to fight, then we will fight. So they have already put this statement out there first. So as you just mentioned, regarding the issue of the undersea cable, if, as you said, the blockade is effective, if you keep blocking Iran, when he feels the pressure is too great and he can't bear it anymore, he will definitely take action. In my opinion, that's just how he is. He feels that he shouldn't have to bear all the pressure alone. So if I can't live well, then no one else will either. Then I'll just cut him off with a pair of scissors. That's how it could end up.
But wouldn't that kind of ending just drag everyone back into war? So I think war would just start again, or even escalate. I think fighting is unavoidable.
So what does he want? If I throw you into chaos, maybe everyone will start fighting. Okay, only after a chaotic battle breaks out can things like energy prices in this world, like you mentioned, be pushed higher or whatever they want. Only if fighting breaks out, let's put it this way, only if fighting breaks out can he put pressure on Trump.
So if he really cuts the cables, what cards does the US have? How would they respond?
Let me tell you, the US could just ignore him. It's the same as with oil.
They just...
Let China and Europe handle it. It has nothing to do with the US, so this matter just drifts to that side.
We just ignore it.
That's fine, because if Iran wants this, the whole world will go after them. Everyone will be criticizing you like poking a hornet's nest.
Let me tell you, it's just like with oil. All the core technologies and everything else have to lean toward the US. The US is the most stable. Everything is stable there.
But in reality, Trump can't do that. No matter how you look at it, like we just said, He already mentioned that straight. We don't even use it. We're selling our own oil now. And it has nothing to do with us if we don't import oil from there. So why does he still want to control that strait?
But let me tell you, that undersea cable, that undersea superhighway is 25,000 miles, 25,000 kilometers. Honestly, it doesn't have much to do with the US. It's just like crude oil. Trump simply doesn't take it seriously. He can just ignore it. This is why I think this war keeps dragging on. Trump can't read the other side, and the other side can't read Trump. In my opinion, the other side can't read Trump. That's my view. My perspective is very different from that of many observers. Let me tell you, Trump simply doesn't care about political pressure. He thinks, I've already thrown the whole world into chaos. What political pressure? As soon as Trump came to power, things got out of hand. Then there's the midterm election. Does Trump care about the midterms? He became president for the sake of the country, not just to win elections. He's already the president.
But he does have to care about the Republican Party.
Hey, let me tell you, if he can't win, then he just can't win. It's fine. This year he can still pass a big American bill, right? He can do one reconciliation each year. Today he even started pushing on Twitter. However much he can achieve, that's what it'll be.
If the Republicans lose both chambers, then impeachment will definitely have a huge impact on him.
Limit.
But for sure, the impeachment won't succeed. It's just like version 1.0. Things can't get too bad, not just at first, but they can't get too bad overall. Secondly, Trump is simply not sensitive to this kind of thing. He doesn't care. Just look at Iran. He doesn't see this issue clearly, so he keeps stirring things up. In the end, Iran will be the one to teach him a lesson. Trump says, I'm a bad guy, just take me out. I think that's the most likely final outcome, but if he gets taken out...
But I think that's fine. Why does everyone always look to the US? Why can't the Gulf countries step up themselves and handle this? That's the real issue.
That's the problem. This whole thing has always been under the surface because I have a friend, he actually has some inside connections with the Gulf countries. On the surface, they act one way, but underneath it's another story. You know, they have one face for show. It's like, I'm totally innocent. I have nothing to do with this, just like you. But behind the scenes, they tell Trump, you take him out. And Trump just chimes in. You send in the army, I'll send in the Air Force. This matter just isn't ripe yet.
It hasn't reached that point yet.
You know, the UAE has already shown its hand, having sent planes to bomb there once. They're itching to fight. Along with Saudi Arabia, they're the only two with real troops. The others don't have any. If they're willing to take action, they can send ground troops, the US can provide air support, or the US can send in special forces for assault operations. Really. They could settle things with Iran, but only if Iran is weakened to the point of being like a beaten dog, so broken that it could be easily defeated.
Maybe it's already that weak to that extent.
I
honestly really don't know.
My point is, what I'm saying is, if they really want to deploy a certain amount of troops in that region to do what you're talking about, I think it would take some time. Maybe it would take them a few months.
Of time.
Don't think so.
Just think about it, the US and Israel, the first time they send troops, they could wipe out all of Iran's top leadership in one go. And then their air defense system could be destroyed within just a few days. A lot of so-called dictators are just hanging on by a thread.
Let me tell you, the military budget of the 6 Gulf countries is 6 times that of Iran.
But do you know what the problem is now? Whether you use the metaphor of a quagmire or a hornet's nest. With so many hornets, do you even know which one is the head and which one is the tail? So even if you kill them, say you wipe out 100 hornets' nests, but the other 100 are still very similar to him. I think the problem with Iran's top leadership right now is that there are just too many of them. These officials may be eliminated, but then new ones just pop up. There could be a second batch, a third batch, maybe even a fifth batch.
So what's needed is a regime change. That's the only way to solve it once and for all.
So
I don't think there's...
Actually, I think what we're saying is basically it's the same.
Let me give another example. I believe that ultimately it will inevitably come down to regime change. Over 400 kilograms of enriched uranium, which is about 1,000 pounds. Right now, it's like the US is saying, either you reach an agreement with me and give me what I want, or I'll have to step in. This is something they must get. If they don't get it, if you don't achieve this, then the sole objective of your war is basically a failure. But now Iran has said, I've already distributed this batch of enriched uranium to various locations. It's not all in one place, and you don't know where I've put it. So if that's really the case, I think the US faces its biggest problem. How are you going to get your hands on this batch of enriched uranium?
There are only 2 ways, either through negotiations. Okay, negotiate and offer Iran very favorable terms. Okay, in the end, let Iran voluntarily hand it over. The second way is to send people in and take it themselves.
The problem is, if it's in different locations, then the second option becomes very difficult. You don't even know where it is, or if it's in 3 or 4 places, you can't possibly send 3 or 4 teams because this is extremely complicated. I watched that interview on 60 Minutes over the weekend. A former commander of the Central Command said that you need to properly deploy the surrounding military forces so they can counterattack. Then what kind of bulldozer are you going to use to dig it open? And you also need to build this kind of makeshift runway, right? That way your transport planes can come in. So it's not just a single task, it's a comprehensive mission. And it's not a mission that can be completed in just a day or two.
That's a massive project. So
You can't do this in several places simultaneously.
actually, in my view, the most effective and most cost-efficient way, with the lowest risk as well, is simply to directly change the regime and replace it with a better one, a normal democratic regime. Once that's in place, all the issues with enriched uranium will naturally be resolved.
But regime change is very difficult without ground troops. So just like Feng Wei said, if the Gulf countries could really achieve this step, maybe it would be a solution.
But
Right now,
this is something I've been thinking about all along. So what exactly is Trump waiting for now? Is it military force or
he just wants to solve the problem through negotiation, so I'm just waiting.
Wear him down.
he...
He always thinks that his blockade can work.
Yes, but we need to understand, that is, when it comes to wearing down this kind of totalitarian state, what exactly are we exhausting? It's definitely not their manpower or human resources, nor is it their food. In every aspect, what's really being worn down is their political authority and the very degree of their existence.
This is Trump's misconception. He thinks that if I make your country suffer, you won't be able to take it and you'll come to negotiate with me. But they absolutely won't come.
So do you think Trump is waiting for their regime to change its own mindset right now?
Yeah,
But what if after waiting a month and they still don't change? What will Trump do then?
exactly. That's just how it is. Not only will they not change after a month of waiting, but within that month, Iran will keep stirring up trouble nonstop.
Right. So
That's why I say this is a real wake-up call for Trump. Because he's never encountered people who are this twisted, this bizarre, this out of bounds. This is a lesson for him. He has to go through this learning process. But anyway, I think Trump is someone who learns very quickly. In the future, it'll be the same with China, the same with the Chinese Communist Party.
he'll figure it out, and it can even serve as a rehearsal.
Iran and the CCP are identical. Everything's the same.
Go ahead.
Their top leader is the general secretary, right? Their president is the head of state, right? Or the premier.
Iran's propaganda is just like the CCP's. Their public statements are idiotic. You're not the same.
They learned everything from the CCP, including Iran. That's information censorship. They also create this network. Blockade, they all learned it from the CCP, including the ordinary people of Iran, who are also learning from the Chinese. The first thing that came to mind was using circumvention software. That Freegate thing is exactly the same. So I think that's the point I basically agree with, which is Trump. Now, there is a very strong kind of thinking, and his thinking is very simple. It's just that I use blockade and siege tactics. I'll push your economy to the brink of collapse, to the point where you can't even get enough to eat. At that point, you'll come to me on your knees begging. You'll obediently come over, agree to my terms, and come negotiate with me. That's his conclusion. He thinks this is a sure thing, that there won't be any problems at all.
He definitely hasn't heard the story of the siege of Changchun. That was when the Chinese Communist Party was fighting the civil war.
So the key point is he simply doesn't have this concept at all. The mindset of these Iranians is different from his, even if the economy really collapses and the whole country falls into chaos. They can't come up with money, can't pay salaries. Didn't he post today? You guys there. Salaries can't be paid. You see SOS. He thinks you're already reaching your limit. He just doesn't understand people whose minds don't work normally like this. Even after taking power, if he can't pay salaries, he might still hold out for a long time. That's just how he is.
It's like North Korea. The whole country is starving, but there's still a fat guy, right?
Right?
Trump needs to understand this. He doesn't have this kind of mindset. To have revolutionary power, you need to have
Several of them.
those heavier set gentlemen.
I don't get it. Trump, didn't you see during those 3 years of pandemic lockdown that China, no matter how big the crisis was,
You can't just confront him face to face like this. I think it's impossible to really go head to head with them.
so Trump still hasn't been hit by the iron fist of communism? Trump doesn't get it.
I think it's not just communism, it's authoritarianism in general. Especially this kind.
People who are brainwashed by this kind of theocratic extreme religious ideology. Those kinds of people are especially fanatical. They really are, from what I see. Their doctrine even says that they're not afraid of death at all. He thinks that if he dies, it's for martyrdom and he can go to heaven. That's the kind of mindset he has. So in this situation, it's very hard for you to use the usual methods that normal people use to achieve your goals.